Hello everybody and welcome back to QuipScope. It's the show where we look at a game that has just come out and we talk about it and give our first impressions and such. I'm Ben.
And I'm Peter.
Peter, it's very exciting. We've had to wait a little while to get hold of the PlayStation 5. We're a week behind most of the world in terms of our coverage, but we would be remiss in our duty if we didn't at least talk about how we were finding the new exciting games.
That's true. I mean, even better than that is the fact that we've both only really felt, not necessarily had time, but just we felt the need to dedicate our PS5 time to just one game each. So when we finally cover, for example, Astro's Playroom or whatever our respective second games are, goodness knows how long they'll have been out by then. A week or two, perhaps.
It will be so timely.
Yeah,
as we so very timely. Yes, absolutely. But first up, one of a double bill of QuipScopes today. I shouldn't have said first up because who knows what order these will release in.
Yeah.
But we're going to talk about Spider-Man Miles Morales. You've been playing this, Peter.
I have.
How does it look? How does it feel? You've recently been playing the original Spider-Man PS4 on PS4.
I have.
So I imagine that makes for a good starting point to compare them.
Yeah, I guess so. In some ways, it doesn't feel like an enormous step up, but then in other ways it does. It certainly feels the same, but I suppose that was always going to be the case in terms of the controls and maneuvering around. Although arguably I would say maybe it feels a little bit more exciting because I think the new animations they've got they just make it that bit more, I don't know. It almost feels like you're showboating even more as you swing down the street. He sort of does like weird backflips and stuff. Some of this might be subtle references to like Spider-Verse that I don't know because I've not seen it and stuff. I know there's the new costume where you've got like a limited frame rate, which is kind of cool. But even like there might even be more subtle things in like the animations and stuff that I'm missing. But in any case, Miles really likes to flip-flop around, and he looks really cool when he does it. Better yet, though, actually, the way it integrates with some of the new tech that the PS5 has is a lot of fun. So, for example, you now get a thwip sound coming out of your controller speaker. I know, obviously, the PS4 had the ability to make controller sounds, but it wasn't used very often, I found. I think Resi 4 did it. Resi 7, and a couple of other games that I played. But in a way that you wouldn't think that would make much of a difference, but I found it actually it almost adds an extra dimension to the immersion. Like, because you can hear the sound of the thwip coming from your hands, it almost just pulls you a little bit closer to the screen, figuratively. You're not quite, it's not VR, but it kind of feels like you're a little bit more in there than you were before. So even a little subtle thing like that, I think, does actually make a difference. In terms of how it looks, again, I don't think there's been a noticeable kind of wow step up that I can see, but I'm limited by the quality of my television, for starters. So, there's only going to be so much that I'm going to notice. However, it does, all that being said, it certainly looks a little bit better. On the other hand, it's set in the winter, and New York is all snowy and slushy. Ooh. And sometimes that looks really nice when you go to, like, a night market or something, and it's all, like, lit up and there's, like, pretty lights. But during the day, it looks a bit grim, to be honest, sometimes. It's all sort of white and grey. But, I guess it was a good move by Insomniac to do that so that you're not really just swinging around an exact copy of the previous game's New York. At least it kind of looks different despite being, Manhattan again. There are new kind of gameplay mechanics being used in the missions, which is super fun. So some of them people will be aware of. There's the new kind of bioelectricity that has been shown in like the promotional material. So you can do lightning punches or whatever and shock your enemies, and there's like sort of AoE ground slam attacks and air launches and things like that. You can sort of break the guard of certain enemies by doing a bioelectric punch. It's actually called Venom.
Oh.
I don't know if that's going to lead to something down the line.
That's interesting.
Or whether it's coincidental. It looks nothing like Venom as we know him. There's no actual in-universe reference to Venom, but they're calling it Venom Punch and Venom Energy and stuff, which is kind of weird.
Right.
So there's the new combat, of course, but on top of that, there's things like you find yourself like raising and lowering things, and when you get them like up to the height that you want them, for example, so you might be like moving a crane or whatever, it'll sort of hang there and then drop, and Miles will go, there must be a way I can make that stick there a little longer. And you have to like...
Is that him? Is that how he sounds?
That's how he sounds, yeah. And you have to then like fire webs, like the gears and the machinery, to make it all stick together so that the crane won't drop, for example. And you combine your bioelectric stuff with your web, in that Miles says it can conduct electricity. So you actually use your web as cabling to like link things together. So occasionally you'll get to like a generator or something, and he's like, I need to get power to that door. And so you'll stick one end of a web to that generator, and you'll walk it over like a loose rope, and then stick it to the door or whatever, and then the electricity can run along your web. So that's kind of fun to do.
Okay.
And even things like, so you may remember from the first Spider-Man game, there were the backpacks to go around and collect.
Yes.
So Peter Parker would go around, he'd find backpacks he'd left around the city, and inside there would be, little keepsakes and things. And he'd go, this was like my first science fair, or this is from my first date with MJ, or whatever. And Miles has got that as well, in that him and his best friend left time capsules around the city. But the good thing about those is that it's not just a case that you go to the map marker and it's there. Like, that quite often happens, but occasionally you'll actually have to stealth your way past some people to get to it, or you'll have to like smash a thing open, or do like a mini puzzle. It's not just go to this point on the map and pick it up, because, in a sense, what's the challenge there? If you just follow the marker and there it is, you've done it, well done, great. But yeah, with a couple of them now, they've added just a little extra thing that you have to do, which is, I think that just adds a little bit more satisfaction to doing things like that.
That's good.
Yeah.
Talk to me about the story, because I wouldn't dare presume, of course, I know you're the world's biggest comics fan.
Yes.
But outside of Into the Spider-Verse, my experience with Miles Morales Spider-Man is pretty limited. How are you finding the story and Miles himself, obviously, after his introduction in the first game, and his rogues gallery? Because there was, I think, maybe one or two villains in Into the Spider-Verse that perhaps are associated with Miles. Again, I'm not entirely sure, but I'm assuming they sort of make an appearance. Perhaps some villains you're not quite so familiar with, maybe some returning ones as well?
Yeah.
With no spoilers, of course.
Of course, yeah. So certainly it feels like, I don't feel like I'm kind of missing anything as such. I'm not like, what is going on? They're not assuming any knowledge of other Miles Morales related media. It introduces his family and friends, of course, in the way you would expect it to do. In terms of his rogues gallery, I've come across the Tinkerer. There's the head of an organization that seems to be the obvious big bad. There was also very early on, like essentially the first sequence of the game involves a villain who was in Marvel Spider-Man on PS4, who is being transported back to the raft, and he escapes during the transportation sequence. This is like the first thing that happens, so it's not really a spoiler. And you then have to sort of subdue that villain. So that's one of the ones that you encountered in the first game, which is that's a good way to tie it together. So they come up with a good way of kind of moving Peter Parker out of the picture temporarily while you are the main hero. But the thing that has really confused me, actually, is the fact that, there's this like sort of controversial move where they've refaced Peter Parker.
Yes, I was going to ask you actually about what you think of his new face. Is he sexy, or is it off-putting?
Well, it's a bit off-putting, having literally just played the previous game. I think if I'd not picked it up just, in about a week, last week actually I was playing it. So if I'd not played it so recently, I wouldn't have minded so much. Because he still looks, he's got some similarities to the original guy. However, it's really confused me that they've done that, because all I've seen of that face, as far as I remember, is there's a catch-up sequence that you can watch before you start the game, which just tells you here's what happened in the previous game. And that shows cutscene bits from the first game, some of which feature Peter Parker's face, and it's the new one that they've added in. But I'm pretty sure that after that, when I started the game, I only ever encountered Peter Parker dressed as Spider-Man, so he had his mask on. And as far as I can tell, they're probably going to make it so that he doesn't now come back until the end of the game. Otherwise, he'd just swing in and save the day. Right. So if you leave out the catch-up cutscene at the beginning, you don't actually see Peter Parker's face in this game. Certainly not in the first. I think I played about 30% of the game, and as I say, I don't expect him to be back until the finale at the earliest. So why have they done that? Why did they? They said it was about like mocap in the new game. They had to like retroactively change the old one because in the new one they needed like someone else to do the mocap or to better match the mocap. And
yeah, the voice actor or something.
Or the voice actor, was it? Yeah. And it just doesn't make sense to me that is their excuse, and yet seemingly Peter Parker's face is not even in this game, or hardly ever, you know?
That is a bit odd. But on the whole, you're enjoying it? You think it's good? Do you think it, obviously it's a lot shorter, but do you think it lives up to the heights of the PS4 version?
I do. And at the moment, it doesn't feel necessarily like obviously smaller. I've got a lot of map markers and collectibles and things to do, still left to do on my map, so there's a lot of that to kind of fill the time. And you know, I've been like mainly focusing on the main story, but there's a lot of side missions. There's a new mechanic introduced actually that allows you to select lots of little obviously you used to encounter random crimes as you swung around the city in the previous game, but now there's a kind of thing that allows you to choose some to go and attend to on a essentially a quest list. Again, I don't want to be too spoilery, but so there seems to be a lot of content, and I'm sure it is going to be comparatively shorter, but it doesn't feel like you're being sold short, really.
Okay.
Yeah, on the whole, really enjoying it, definitely.
Fantastic. Well, Spider-Man Miles Morales, more like Spider-Man more of... sorry, hang on. Let me try that again.
Yeah.
More like Spider-Man Miles more? Question mark? Yes.
Yeah?
Don't help me.
Spider-Man Miles Morales. It's more like Spider-Man Miles better than the previous game. I mean, it's not. It's just.
Yeah, it's on par. It's
on par. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Is that it? It's a difficult one. It's a long title, isn't it?
Yeah. Bye, everyone.
Bye.